we are live. We're live. Hi.
Hi.
Can't wait to see your order.
Hi, everybody.
What's up, y'all?
Hello.
I said Luke.
Yeah, okay.
Looks like. Oh, okay. Back with the C's first.
So I should go first?
Yes.
Hi, y'all. I'm Beck, also known as Born to be a Book Nerd on TikTok. This is my special guest star, Seamus. I personally, if we're doing this, I personally identify in a lot of different places on the ace spectrum. I'm still figuring that out today, but I'm definitely on there. Oh, my pronouns are they, them, or she, her.
Hi, I'm Tiff, or White Wolf 64. My pronouns are she, her. I also identify just as ace. I don't have a specific term yet, I guess.
That's valid. Hi, I'm Beck. I go by they, them pronouns. My TikTok is ry.dayhaven, and I am demisexual.
Hi, I'm Sol, tilde fox.cos. I use they, him pronouns, and I identify as ace. Somewhere in the spectrum. Yes.
Hi, I'm Eliza, also known as Sputnik Kaz. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a classic bland ace.
Not bland, original flavor. I'm just waiting to see questions start to come in on the chat since there's a delay.
Yes. I just want to appreciate Doormat calling us all iconic. You are the iconic one.
Matt is an icon, and that is a fact.
Yes.
Do you know what we're here to talk about today?
So yeah, we're just waiting for questions. I don't see questions yet.
Please ask us questions.
Ask us all of the questions because this is a topic a lot of people do not know.
Oh, I love you too. The blue thought.
Someone appreciated my not bland original flavor comment.
Yes. Is it there? Yes.
We're here to talk about asexuality, being on the ace spectrum, though. So if you guys have any questions for us about that, feel free to ask us. We're here to answer all that stuff because, again, like Sol said, this topic isn't really as talked about as it should be, at least as I see it. So, because, there are a lot of stereotypes here. People assume a lot of things, so the people that
I see one. Dionysus Bro says, how do you realize that?
I didn't hear you cut out.
How did we all realize that we were ace?
Dionysus Bro says, exactly.
Do we want to go in order? So Beck start?
Sure. For me, it actually took longer than you would have expected, considering that one of my sister's friends, who's actually someone I consider a sibling, like, I knew them from an early age, and they themselves are ace, but they're also aromantic. And so, because they were the first person I ever met that identified as ace, my brain sort of conflated the two. So even though I was feeling a lot of the classic ace struggles, I didn't think that was an option for me because I still experienced romantic attraction. And then I just so happened to, my junior year of high school, end up in my English class getting seated with a couple of other girls who each also identify as ace. And like talked more to them and like learned more about it, and that it's separate from aromanticism. And yeah, and then sort of halfway through my senior year of high school, I was like, oh, this would explain a lot. Yeah.
If you want to go first.
Well, in high school, there's a lot of talk about, sex and stuff like that, but I never really felt that I needed to care about any of that. So I kind of just looked up different things for like why I wasn't doing what everybody else was doing in high school. And I kind of realized that you kind of just don't really need that. And that's kind of how I found out that I was ace.
No. I mean, I found out I was demi because again, in college, a lot of my friends, I'm going to say, were a lot more out there when it came to sexual encounters. And I was like, I just I'm not the type of person to really seek out that sort of thing. Like, again, if it happens, it happens, that's fine. But like, I just kind of realized I'd rather have a partner for love and stuff instead of just that. And if it happens, sure, whatever. But I really need to have an emotional connection with somebody before I can even consider that. Like, it's not really on the top of my priority list. And I kind of realized, wow, I'm on the ace spectrum, especially after a first date of mine. That was an interesting date. And I was like, oh no, I think I'm ace. My experience.
It's so valid, but oop.
Yeah. For me, I realized pretty early on, even though I didn't know what the term was until mid high school. Like in Mexico, there's like a lot of us are like aware of how we attract sexually really, really young. So every time somebody said about like, oh, I imagine the things I would do if I was in a room alone with so and so or something like that, and I was like, the only thing I would imagine is like a huge room with chairs and just like sitting there awkwardly. So yeah, I was not like up to speed with all of my other like classmates or anything else, and it just went along with them, like just laugh awkwardly and said like, oh yeah, haha, imagine. But I didn't realize until I knew what asexuality was that I said like, oh, I just don't want that. I just want to like cuddle or have like I have romantic feelings about people.
As for me, I believe it was freshman year. A bunch of my friends were getting into relationships, starting to become intimate. And I didn't see what the big deal was. Everyone was like, oh, this is fun, blah, 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 blah. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't understand the hype. I had no feelings for it. And that's about it.
Valid. Also, and Harvey is asking us to define ace for the chat, which is important. We should define it.
Yeah, sorry for not doing
we
the definition first. That's what I was tapping to remind myself.
was trying to say, but I mean, I don't know if we all have the same exact definition, but I'm pretty sure we all have similar. The way we all.
Asexuality, the lack of experiencing sexual attraction in some way, shape, or form.
It's a
yeah.
It's also
that's the broadest definition I can come up with.
Yeah.
So there's ace, there's gray ace, there's demi, there's multiple different types of ace, again, on the spectrum. So it doesn't mean when I say I'm ace, doesn't mean I'm exactly like, no, not at all. No, don't even touch me. No, don't even look at me, man. Again.
Touch me there. This is my news.
Like, and like we've said, things like the things we've mentioned, like demisexuality is generally defined as not experiencing sexual attraction until you've established an emotional connection with someone. Like that's a prerequisite for attraction to occur. Gray asexuality is, I'm always a little iffier on the definition for that, but it's more like once in a blue moon sexual attraction is experienced, but it's like few and far between. And then, yeah, that's best definitions I can think of right now. If anyone has any other questions, like definition questions, just put them in the chat.
Yeah. Rest ask, did you have any hard time accepting your ace?
Yes, I did. 100% I did. I was like, I thought I was really weird, and I was really scared that like I was not like my friends. I even was terrified. I've been like, even to this day, I was scared that like nobody would want to get in a relationship with me because of that. But we know that's not true, and it is not true. There are many people out there that will love you no matter what, and you know, sex isn't everything. Just saying. So if you are out there and you're scared of that, like scared somebody won't love you because of it, just know it's not everything.
Yeah, I had a rough time coming to terms with it because I figured out there was something different with how I was different about me when I was like in middle school. We started doing the whole sex ed thing and everyone hitting puberty suddenly starting to talk about stuff and get very obsessed with it. And I was just like, I do not understand the hype. And like, I just sort of tried to ignore it and made a lot of jokes to deflect about it up through high school. And so through high school, I was still making this sort of immature jokes about like the immature jokes about sex or anything related to it that one might expect from a middle schooler, because I didn't know how to get past that without dealing with my own stuff there. And it wasn't until I figured out that, oh, like asexuality and aromanticism are separate. Like this is a thing that you could be. This is valid. That was part of what helped me come to terms with it. But what was the wake up call to needing to end those behaviors of deflection was my best friend in high school, like told me that she felt like she was going through some stuff and figuring some stuff out. And she at one point sat me down and told me that she didn't feel like she could talk to me about it because of the way I acted whenever these subjects are brought up. And to hear that my best friend felt like she couldn't confide in me was a big wake up call for me. To like actually do some soul searching and figure out that I am asexual.
Yeah. For me also was really hard, especially because in my culture a lot of things are revolving about that. And when I was younger, I just like thought like everybody was like me until like a certain point in their life, like, oh, you're gonna start liking this now. And I just like waiting and waiting and waiting till like I tried to hit that point, and I'm like, that has never come. And then I realized, like, oh, I am ace. And still, when I say it to people, a lot of people like look at me shocked and say, like, wait, you're ace? There was a lot of people who had that reaction when I said that. But yeah, the exact same like point. Like when I realized, it's when I like was even more awkward in dating, because like the point was brought up earlier that I will feel like people don't want to date me, and because I don't want to do any of that, and that just is really hard.
Anything else to add? Or as someone asked if we can explain what demi is more.
I'll leave that to you.
Yes.
Demisexual. Go off, Beck. Okay. Basically, how I kind of see it is that, like, I don't really experience any need to do anything like that, or like any attraction, until I really connect with somebody on like a very emotional level that I feel like, I don't want to say safe enough, but in a way that's the only way I can explain it, or like that I feel like very connected to this person. And until then, I really just don't feel the need. And that's really what demisexuality is. You just need an emotional connection with someone. And then it's not even just an emotional connection. You could just be like, you just need a strong connection with a person, like a real bond with somebody in order to feel attraction to them. And again, this is all very just my personal experience too. Demisexuality can mean something else for someone else. Like, I'm just saying my own experience, because asexuality is so broad that like it's very hard to pinpoint exactly what it means.
Yeah.
And so I'm only going up based off of my experience, but like, again, you can be demisexual and have a sort of different experience too. It's all very, very different. Then, from Harvard Angel asks, how has the lack of ace characters affected your experience?
Oh. May I rant a little bit on this topic?
I was just gonna say, certainly didn't make anything easier.
Oh no.
Really did it. It's really hard because like you just see all these characters and you sort of just feel like, I mean, at least I felt like there was something off about me, but like I didn't understand why. And then like I just wanted to find someone I could connect to, and there was really nobody there that I could validate my experience.
Yeah. May I?
Go for it, Sol.
Okay. So I am really passionate about like animation and cartoons and stuff, and the only representation I've seen with ace coded characters is either aliens or robots. And also this goes along with autism, which I'm also autistic. And it just like
often being conflated.
Yeah. And it bothers me because it often looks like it's not human, or it's just not natural. But it is natural. And then the only explicit character explicitly said that they are asexual in a show or something is from BoJack Horseman, Todd Chavis, and that it's the only one I can think of currently that has said like I am asexual and had an episode dedicated to that topic. I have never seen it anywhere else, either in regular TV or cartoons or anime, but it bugs me a lot that there is no explicit character that is asexual. except for that one character in that cartoon. Even though if you are under I would say 17, don't watch because it has a lot of topics. It's a show like The Simpsons or like Futurama and stuff like that.
There's an ace character in Sense8 apparently. I
Over
didn't
there.
get very far with that.
Seen it.
Yeah, and someone else was pointing out SpongeBob's creator confirmed SpongeBob to be asexual, but there's no episodes dedicated to it. That's cool, especially for folks who are now going to look up what that means. But it's also, that whole thing is more about, it's a little bit of a pun joke thing for like marine biology nerds, because sea sponges reproduce asexually. So that's which feeds into some annoying jokes that we sometimes get.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to add? Or because I saw something that's sort of important. Wait, someone asked, do you still look at people and think attractive even if there's no further intention there? And I would like to say yes, I am in a relationship actually. So yeah, yes. Kind of proof that there is. Again, I am in a relationship, so
yeah, you can still. This is actually reminds me of a conversation I had with some friends I had early on in college, who one of them tried to explain what a crush was to me.
No,
because she knew I was asexual, and I'm like, no, I know what crushes are. I get crushes. I'm just like, and like, you definitely can, and even if it's not in a, so I can look at someone and be like, that is a cute, handsome, pretty, insert other adjective person. I can think that in a way of like, usually if I know the person and I'm starting, I can like start to see them in the light of, oh, maybe I could have a crush on this person at some point in time. If I'm just like, but also if I'm just like watching a movie or like out and about, I can be like, ah, yes, a pretty person. The same way one could, I don't want to put it this way, but the same way one could be like, oh, look, a pretty tree. Like, aesthetically, you could appreciate something still.
Just because we're asexual, we can't see, we don't know what, like.
I'm ace, not blind.
Exactly. For me, it's kind of like if I see a really attractive person, my urge is like, I want to draw you. That's my thing. I was like, I see a person, I'm like, aesthetically pleasing or really attractive. I'm like, I want to draw you. I
still get flustered when I find someone cute. Like, dang.
Yeah. Also, there's a difference. There's asexuality and ace, and was it a romantic?
Romantic.
A whole other can of worms to get into, but
yeah.
Again, asexuality is just different than aromantic. Like, again, I'm on the ace spectrum, but I still want to be in a relationship.
Just because we don't experience sexual attraction doesn't mean we don't experience any attraction.
That's accurate. That's true. Thank you. That's very true. So yeah.
Someone asked earlier how we feel about the Hunters of Artemis.
Oh.
So one of the things that maybe should have clued me into the whole, like, not that I knew the language for it at the time, but when I first read like the Titan's Curse, I was like, ooh, I vibe with the Hunters of Artemis. That is a vibe for me. Years later, I turn out to be biromantic and asexual, and I'm like, none of this should be surprising. But like, I was like, that, because I read it around the age where I was starting to get these feelings of like, maybe I'm being left behind by my peers in some way and I don't belong. And I read that. I legitimately like sat in my room with the book and like I still have the same copy. And I like recited the pledge to myself in my bedroom, like hoping that like I could get to go join all these awesome ladies and not have to deal with the BS that was middle school. Yeah, that, and so like there are a lot of things to say about like whether or not the hunters are like perfect, are a great they're certainly not a perfect representation of asexuality, but having them exist in a book series was definitely something that really helped me when I was younger.
Yes. Jeff Beck, wanna? Or yeah.
When I first read the Percy Jackson books, I didn't really like put two and two together for the Hunters of Artemis. I just went, oh, they don't need to do that because they're hunters of the Artemis, and you know they live in the woods all the time. When would they find a guy to do that with? But now that I'm older, yeah, I can vibe with that.
Um,
I'm trying to think how to word this right. I like the Hunters of Artemis. However, I don't really vibe with their aesthetic. I know like being a demigod is all about combat, to learning how to protect yourself from monsters, and it's basically what every demigod does. However, I'm not the fighting type. I can't like identify with them. I don't know.
yeah, I'm a wildlife bio minor and I really enjoy doing archery, so I don't know if this influenced the things I like to do or if it's just
On the contrast, I'm an international relations major with a theology minor. I just like words and gods and stuff.
that's so valid, my dude. Wow, what was
Um,
the other?
I didn't read the books until last year, and I cheered on the Hunters of Animus, and I was like, if Artemis came to me when I was younger and said like, do you want to be a hunter, and told me about that, I'd be like, yes, on a heartbeat. But yeah, just really cool. But I vibe more with the Amazons other than the and the hunters. But still, they're really, really amazing.
All right. Speaking of the hunters and their connection to asexuality, does anyone here want to cover the question, like about the difference between celibacy and asexuality?
Yes, Eliza.
All right. So celibacy is the choice not to be intimate. And I guess you can be celibate and asexual. I guess it's sex repulsed asexual, right? And
Well,
asexuality
not
is
just that. It's more like just choosing not to have sex and also not experiencing it. Sorry.
mhm. But asexuality, it's not really like the choosing not to be intimate with someone. It's just kind of, you don't feel it.
It's more like, so you can be allosexual or just not. I've seen a couple of different terms for folks who aren't asexual, either allosexual or zsexual. I've seen different people use either term, but basically folks who aren't ace can also choose to be celibate. Like, you'll see that with, like, think of it like priests and monks and nuns and the like they're choosing celibacy. And that has nothing to do with whether or not they, at any point in their life, experience sexual attraction. You can be ace and be celibate. You can choose to not have sex because you don't wanna. You can also choose to not be celibate. That's another thing. It's perfectly possible. Like as long as you're comfortable with it, yeah, for sure. If people have sex, it's a thing. But yeah, so there can be overlap, but it's not. They're not one and the same.
Yeah. Also, just real quick, Miss Applewhite says in the chat, thoughts on people telling me I can't have crushes on fictional characters because I'm demi. I personally think it's stupid. I get that so much, and
That's so dumb.
Back to
No.
hello. You can't have crushes just because you're demi, and I get that so much, and I just need to, like, it's been really
Not fun.
because, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like once you say I have a crush or once you're in a relationship, people just automatically assume that, oh, you're not ace anymore. No. Well, honey, that's not how that works. You're still ace even though you can have crushes. You're still ace even though you're in a relationship. You could be married and be ace. It's literally does not change a thing.
Yeah, so I came out as ace before I ever came out as bi. And when I came out as bi to the group of friends I had at that time, I had one of them ask me, oh, doesn't the whole bi thing cancel out the whole ace thing? And I had to take a second to resist the urge to hit my head against a wall. And then despite it being annoying and exhausting, calmly and politely explain to him that no, that romantic attraction and sexual attraction are two separate things. And I feel romantic attraction towards all genders, and I feel sexual attraction rarely, if ever.
Exactly. That's how it works. Exactly. And people don't get it, and it's so annoying.
It is really annoying. For me, I'm pan-romantic, and a lot of people was like, how does that work? You're ace and you're pan. I'm like, and I agree with you, Beck. Like, it just want to hit my head against the wall.
Yeah.
What makes it worse is the guy who asked that question is actually my ex. I have questionable taste in men. That's a separate story. I make jokes about my pain.
Love that. Yeah, I feel that, like, people just need to understand that you can still be ace and still like people and still be in a relationship. It really doesn't define your romantic life.
And you can be in a relationship with someone who is not also asexual.
Yeah, hello. Again, it's a normal thing. I don't know. That stuff just really, I feel like people just need to say that more, because again, I feel like people just dismiss it after you say I'm in a relationship, I'm engaged, I'm married. People just dismiss the whole asexuality factor of you, but It doesn't go away. I mean, and as you grow up, it could change. That's fine. That's normal. You just people are discovering themselves more and more every single day. So that's why everything's on a spectrum.
Yeah. And like, yeah, speaking of spectrums, trying to segue into a question that I've seen pop up a couple of times.
I also put a question in the chat.
Yeah, it's the one I saw you put in the chat.
Cool.
It's from our good friend, Rez Halfblood. Do we consider aces who are heteroromantic and cisgender to be a part of the LGBT community? I will, if I may start, I definitely do. Though how I would put it is it's more of an, if you want to, you can opt out of considering yourself a part. Because I know some folks who are cishet asexuals are a little bit uncomfortable with being considered LGBT. Like it could be like, oh, I just don't feel like I deal with enough, or like I don't, or just not vibing with being part of that umbrella, and that's totally valid. But I'm not about to turn anyone away from this like community, because asexuals do experience a whole lot of bad stuff. I have been talked down to in doctor's office, been talked down to by romantic partners, like had been sort of treated somewhat infantilizingly. And like there are plenty of things that ace people go through that like, so you can't say that like ace people don't experience discrimination. It's not a oppression competition. It's everyone. But yeah, you're part of the club unless you're uncomfy being in the club, and then you're free to go.
Exactly.
Man, that's why.
There's also a lot of debate with LGBTQ. There's LGBT. Yeah, there's somewhere there's the A. A lot of people.
QIA.
Yeah. A lot of people say like A means ally or A means ace. I personally, my opinion was the A means ace. And also I had my best friend Karina. She asked me because she's cis and het, but she's also ace. She asked me the same question and was like, yes, you are part of our community. But if you want to, and she completely is onto the idea. And just real shout out to her. But when I thought I was not straight, I also questioned myself with this question. If I am still in the community, if I'm just ace. And I saw that one question also, I'm like, am I still valid? I forgot who asked it, but yes.
You drool when you sleep.
Thank you. You drool when you sleep. You are so valid, and love you.
Anything else for us?
You guys.
I don't.
Are there other questions that like we didn't get to?
chat and see what else questions.
I've Raneem Ghanayem. Gosh, I hope I did that, pronounce that somewhat correctly, or at least not too horribly. How do I deal with my mom telling me being aromantic and asexual is a phase because I'm just a 15-year-old? It's here's the thing about, like, even on the off chance this isn't how you identify for your whole life, that doesn't make it any less valid. Like, the moon's still in the sky when it's a new moon. Like, it's still, you're still you. And I have changed how I identify over the years. I started out thinking I was a cisgender, hetero, romantic, asexual woman. And now I am a biromantic, aspec, demigirl. Like, I tend to prefer they, them pronouns to she, her. Like, that doesn't make how I identified before any less valid. It's just, that's something that always gets to me when people say things are just a phase, is you're allowed to change and you're allowed to figure yourself out and grow. You've got plenty of time to grow. You're 15. That doesn't make how you feel and how you identify right now any less real or valid, though.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all here for you, hon.
Yeah,
The first time I started thinking that maybe I'm asexual was when I was 15. And my best friend, we had a sleepover, and she had this boyfriend, and they were intimate, and I was like, you know, I could never. I think I might be asexual. And she's like, you'll grow out of it. Even my mom said, oh, you'll grow out of it. This is just a phase. You're not mature yet. Yet here I am, almost 21. Things haven't really changed. And you're allowed to change.
Yeah.
However, it's not always a phase.
Yeah,
It can be, but it's not. It's again, you can grow and learn, but also you can stay the same. It's very different for everyone else's experience. Everyone has a very different experience in life, and that should never, and you're all very valid in your experience in your life. Like, for 3 years, I was very sick, so I was having absolutely no attraction to anything at all. And that wasn't a phase for me. That was part of my life. And only, like, recently have I, like, been discovering myself again. But, like, again, you can't invalidate parts of your life that you have gone through. Like, me being Demi has been like this for an extremely long time. And yeah, my mom has told me that too. I'm 22, and my mom still tells me it's just a phase. So, if that says anything at all,
I think I was 20 or 21 in a doctor's office, had a nurse practitioner, like, when she was asking me questions and she asked me about sexual history, and I was like, not applicable. I'm asexual. And, like, she's like, oh, you'll meet the right guy. And this is after I had also mentioned being bi, like, as part of things. And that's on there should be more sensitivity training for medical professionals. But that's another topic.
I agree. 100%. I relate.
Yeah, same.
I'm like, I am a whole adult. It's not necessarily gonna be a guy, if that ever is the case. You're wrong on a lot of levels, lady.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one last question, if we want to round it off to that, where Herbie asked us our thoughts on Reina.
Love her.
Yes.
I love you so much.
I think we should let Beck go first.
I'm just happy. I'm just happy.
So much.
So Reina is my favorite female character, and now I understand why.
Mhm.
I definitely have vibed with her a lot. Like, not only partially on the like not having fantastic luck in the romance department front, but also just having a very important yet other things, like having a very important yet very complex relationship with your older sister. That's something that is a thing for me. Like, so I have vibed with Reina a lot, and like having that felt so wonderfully validating, and I'm super happy. And I'm glad people in the chat are enjoying my happy dance.
And I love you. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Anyone else wants to?
Just glad.
Anyone else have comments, or did I cover it with my happy dance?
That was me.
I think that was explained very well for all of us. Our mood.
Yeah.
A mood, yes. Oh, Princess Ponies, Beck's for dance of happy A's Reina noises. Yes, I agree to that.
We are.
Look, I never had that when I was younger. And I grew up thinking I was weird and broken, and that there was something wrong with me, and that I needed to just push those feelings down and make jokes to deflect.
Mood.
And now there's going to be a whole bunch of kids who don't have to go through what I went through.
Again, what a mood.
The only ace rep that I had growing up was Nikola Tesla.
Well,
That guy was pretty weird about his pigeons.
But also a famous historical ace.
yeah.
Yes.
I didn't have any representation in any way or form when I was younger.
Closest
So
thing I had was Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, and I can go off on a whole angry rant about that.
Sheldon, I forgot about him. Yeah, mood.
I don't had any representation at all. I discovered everything, all LGBT stuff, by myself, which was a fun time. But yeah, and that's why we're all here, because we're help you guys to like, now you guys have people and to tell you, and like to, so you're not alone in this world. So you know that there are other people out there that feel the way you do, are going through the similar things that you are. And just so you know, you aren't alone, because I know I felt alone before, but like, now that people talk about it more, it feels less lonely in this world. So
Look at us.
Yeah. If you, I know there's going to be a second half of the stream with other folks. I just wanted to point out, like, as I'm sure I've seen people mention the organization in the chat, to check out the AVEN. Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network. I think I got that right. But like, and other places, like if you check out Ash Hardell on YouTube, they do a lot of cool LGBT educational stuff. Like, there are resources, and if you're feeling like you're weird or different or alone, if you need a word, there's probably a word out there, and you can find these resources if you look for them. You're not alone. We're all here for you.
We're all here. So I think we are coming up on the hour, and we have to transfer over to the next set of wonderful, wonderful icons that will be here for you guys. Because, yeah, they're a lot of wonderful people. But any final thoughts from any of us?
I just
You're
wanna say
valid.
Yes, you're valid, and we love you.
asexual-
Eliza?
Asexuality is valid in all forms. Yeah,
Yeah. Any final
y'all are valid.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are very valid, and we're really happy that we could be here and have this whole panel to help out. And again, on to the next wonderful set of icons that will be here.
Yes.
We love you guys a lot.
I love you.
Love you all.
Stay tuned.
Then peace out.
Hey guys, this is Loretta. We'll be right back with a couple more amazing people to do part 2 of the panel. So.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh yeah. I guess
Hazel, what's the order?
Peyton goes first, and then me, and then Reina, and then Princess, and then you, Hobby.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I am Peyton. My pronouns are she.
Do you
Hi.
want to say how you identify on the
Oh yeah, I'm very
spectrum?
tired. And I'm Demi.
Hi, I'm Hazel. Hazel the writer on most things, and I go by she/her, and identify on the ace spectrum, so kind of figuring a couple other things out in my life, but generally ace. So.
Hi, I'm Reina, Regal Reina. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm biromantic, asexual.
Mina?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm Princess. Princess Ponies 81. I go by they, them, and I am Arrow Ace.
Hi, I'm Harvey. Yes, you can find me at Ace Angel Cosplay. Yes, the ace is in reference to my sexuality. I identify as demi-romantic, and then on the ace spectrum, it's complicated. So
Yeah. I think we'll probably also start out. I know we went through definitions on the last live stream, but we'll probably start out with like our own personal definitions for how we identify, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to start first or not, Peyton. We're just going around.
Sorry, I kind of missed what you
Oh,
said.
basically just going through and defining our own personal, I don't know, definitions for how we identify.
Okay, for me, I use the word demi, but it's really just I don't feel sexual attraction until I do, which is a hard way of describing it, but imagine if I could words today, that'd be neat. But yeah, it's mostly like I've really just been out here not feeling any type of sexual attraction. Romantic attraction for me, yes, but sexual, no, until just the one time I did for a specific person I've known for like a few years. If that makes sense. Yeah, I'm bad at words. If someone else wants to go,
Yeah.
go for it.
So like I identify as ace. I did / do identify as demi. I still am again kind of trying to figure stuff out with my own sexuality, but definitely on the ace spectrum. So I define ace as basically experiencing little to no sexual attraction. Of course, ace is kind of an umbrella term in a lot of ways, so there's a lot of different kind of like subclasses within ace that explains like how you identify and like when you feel sexual attraction, if you feel sexual attraction. But in general, I don't really experience sexual attraction or like anything like that. So. Reina, if you want to go. Yeah.
My brain went Zoom. What are you saying? I'm so sorry.
Oh, just
how we define our sexualities.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's more of, for myself, I'd be like on the gray ace spectrum, because even when I was romantically involved with someone, the attraction on the sexual level was very wacky. It was just weird. It was just on and off, and I'm just somewhere on the spectrum. So somewhere between demi and somewhere between ace. Somewhere there.
For me, being Arrow Ace, it's just kind of I'm just vibing. I'm by myself. I'm having a good time. There's nothing all across the board. That's it.
I love you so much. So for me, I'm demi-romantic, which means that like I pretty much have to be friends with you before I even consider dating you. Like it's not like I prefer to date for my friends, it's that I don't feel romantic feelings until like we've connected on some sort of emotional level. So for instance, my current relationships, I knew my partners for I don't even know, like 5 months before I got a crush on them. And then I'm also in a queer platonic relationship. That's not important right now. But we may talk about that later. Who knows? And then but on the sexuality side, I identify as agosexual, which is lets me talk about micro labels a little bit. But it's just another label on the asexuality spectrum, and it means like a disconnect between oneself and the object that you of arousal. So like, how do I say this? So it's like I can find people attractive, or I can like be aroused, but like as soon as I'm involved, I don't want anything to do with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the most PG way for me to phrase this.
Yeah, it's more fun talking about being asexual. Like, so much it has to do with defining kind of like, you know, that part of your life, especially when that part of your life, like, it's hard to discuss it on PG-13 panels, but we're trying our best.
Yeah, on a PG,
I'm trying my best
on a
here.
PG-13 channel, and also a public one where anyone can watch this.
Yeah, so we're trying our best to be not like, you know, crossing any weird lines, but still like not being cryptic. But there's only so much we could do. There's lots of constraints on this. But we're gonna try to talk a lot about our experiences, that kind of thing. So
I'm prepared to use every
my partner's in the
stupid
chat.
label.
My partner's in the chat telling me that I should talk more about my relationship, and I think you're very cute, just for the record. Continuing on.
So one of the things too I wanted to kind of like, I don't know, so ace is a really big spectrum, like it's a very big spectrum. I almost feel like it's similarly in size to like kind of the queer spectrum in a sense. Like there's so much within it, which is why also I do think labels, a lot of people say that they think labels will just make things more complicated, etc., etc. But I think labels can be helpful. If they're helpful to you, they're helpful, and that's important. And so, like, for example, I've always known I was ace. I never really, like, I don't know, I don't consider my coming out as coming out because I've always been this way, and I wasn't necessarily like ashamed of it. I was just kind of like, yeah, that's just how I am, whatever. But I did feel like an increased level of comfort in a sense by knowing that there was a term for it, because it makes you feel less alone. And also just having an easier way to describe, because it's hard to describe things sometimes, and you don't really know how to explain like why your feelings are different. So having those labels isn't about like boxing you in. Of course, it can be if you like add gatekeeping to it, but as long as we're being good about not gatekeeping, labels can be really helpful in just explaining and describing and, like, you know, connecting with people, because ultimately we as a human species thrive on connection of all types, and so we all just want to feel like seen and heard, and have friends and just interact with people. So
it was so wild. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, because like as I mentioned, like I like to use micro labels. It's not necessarily something that's widely accepted within the queer community because they like too many labels or whatever. There's a lot of people who are against that, but I think that it's important to have those labels because it lets people realize that, oh, if there's this label, that means that there are other people who feel the same way I do. Like, I'm not the only one who experiences attraction in this way.
Yeah.
So
I think ultimately, I'm going to go in a second too. I think ultimately it's important, like basically letting labels be used by those who want to use the labels, and as long as we're not like, you know, forcing labels on other people, that's where things become problematic. But it's totally valid and okay if you individually want to use labels, and like if a community wants to use labels, then yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we all just to be better about letting people vibe with how they want to vibe in every situation. So if labels are great and helpful for you, that's fantastic. Keep using them. If you don't like labels, you don't have to use them. You don't have to like prescribe to those labels in a sense. So, and I know Raina has something to say. So.
Oh no, I think I'll just wait until it comes up again because my thought sort of split.
Sorry, I don't even remember what I was gonna say.
I see a question that I like, unless Raina wants to go.
I'll just go ahead first since we were talking about labels real quick. I was trying to figure out how I got to one thought to another because my brain just goes boom, boom, boom. When we talk about labels, it was so wild for me when I was younger, and I realized that romantic attraction and sexual attraction were two different things. Because I knew that I was attracted to two or more genders, but like I was like, but I don't feel the same way as everyone else who are bisexual, how they feel towards their partners and all that. And then so my brain went poop. Okay.
Wait, I have one thing to add on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just thought this was really funny because I was texting my friend last night because I was like, oh, I'm going to be on this panel tomorrow. I'm nervous because I don't know what I'm going to say. And then my friend was like, wait, are you Ace? And then I was like, oh, no, I'm Demi. And she's like, oh, wait, me too. And I've known her for like 5 years. And I was like, wow, I don't talk about my labels enough. And I guess she doesn't either because we didn't know that about each other. We've been best friends for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. My cousin, when I came out to, I was like trying to explain like my sexuality because I just generally identified as Demi at that point in time to her. And then she was like, oh yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like when I was explaining what asexuality was. And she was like, I was like, so you're ace? And she was like, oh.
Yeah.
That's how I felt with my best friend, because I came like quotation mark out to him way before he realized that he was demisexual. And then so I was explaining to him like, oh yeah, this is how I feel. And he's like, okay, vibes, whatever. And then 4 years later, he's like, oh, you know what? I just realized that I'm demisexual. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. Like, hey, we shake hands.
So one of the questions I kind of wanted to touch on too, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but Renim, I think, said, "What's a good way to come out to someone as era ace people on with the terms?" So I grew up religious, and like I don't know, my religion just didn't really talk very much about queer community. Like it just kind of was like avoid the topic, let's just pretend it doesn't exist kind of thing. Like they want openly hateful, but they also want openly accepting, which is problematic. So I was very like unaware of the terms myself, and again I always identified this, but I wasn't well. Like for example, I think my first encounter with the term asexual was reading I was on Tumblr and somebody was like, oh, maybe the reason there's not kids on Asgard is because Asgardians are just all ace. And I honestly thought they meant that Asgardians reproduce through asexual reproduction. Like that's what I thought because I hadn't been educated on these terms, and I was like, that's kind of weird. Like I don't understand what you mean by that, but whatever. That's your headcanon. And later I found out what asexual meant through going to a very liberal high school that had a lot more representation and inclusion and people wanting to talk about these things. And then I was like, wait, I vibe with that. That resonates with me. But like for example, I don't know. I had a weird relationship with my sexuality in a sense. I still went on dates once I graduated from high school. I started dating a little bit. And I just kind of didn't really, I don't know. I had already decided I wasn't going to kiss anybody. Like, that was a big thing to me. I was like, I'm not going to kiss anybody. Like, that's the line, and I'm not going to cross that. And I was kind of like, if people don't want to date me because of that, that's fine, whatever. I was mostly dating for the social aspect. And, like, I went on a date with one guy, and I kind of, like, tested the waters by bringing up a friend from high school that was ace. And they said, oh, well, I think everybody's attracted to someone. And I was like, yep, you failed. Next. Like, we're not going anywhere with this. But honestly, the most awkward thing, so at this point I had already kind of like explained to my mom that I didn't really feel sexual attraction, and like I didn't want to deal with being in high school. Once I was out of high school, people want as like to say, oh, it's just a phase, because I was a full-grown adult at this point. But I did, the most awkward coming out in a sense was I went on a date with this guy, and we got along fantastically and like really hit it off, and we actually ended up like closing out the restaurant we were at, and they had to come over and be like, oh, we didn't want to kick you guys out because you guys are so cute, but we're closing, you have to leave. So I was having a really great time and just really had like connected with him, and then the date came, and I actually drove him home, and he was like, hey, could I kiss you? And I was like, crap. I like this guy, but I don't like this guy that way. So I said no, straight to his face. I was like, no, you can't. And he was just like, oh, like clearly I think he misread things. And I was like, no, it's really not you, it's me. Like I'm ace. I don't know if you know that term. And he kind of had some experience with that term a little bit. He apparently dated someone that was ace in high school, so that made things easier. But it was extremely awkward because I like actually did connect with this person, but I felt really weird about saying no. I mean, I was really happy though that he had asked, because that was my biggest fear of dating, was that I was gonna have to dodge a kiss at some point on a date. Like, be like, if they lean in and kiss me, what am I gonna do? Like, jump out of the car? Like, so anyways, long story short though, like, I kind of just had to explain to him and talk him through it in a sense where I was like, yeah, so I don't really feel that way. And at that point, I was like, there's a chance I'm demisexual. Like, I've kind of had known some of the terms. I'm like, right now I identify as ace, but I honestly don't know. I've never really connected with somebody, like, on that level in a sense. So, like, there's a chance. I'm like, but ultimately, like, I don't know, maybe I am just straight up ace, maybe I'm Denny, I don't know, like, whatever. And we kept kind of going on, like, you know, casual dates, and eventually we started actually, like, dating. And now we're married. So you can be ace and be married to people. My husband is not asexual. I am asexual, but we, like, our relationship works, and we are just basically completely honest in a sense with, like, what we're comfortable with and where things are at. So was my very long story on explaining how, like, I kind of came out as ace in a sense to people and explain it to people. So,
Hazel, I
let's
love
go.
you.
Yes. I have a kind of funny story about coming out as ace in particular. Like, most of my I've come out multiple times. I've, like, come out as different identities as I've, like, learned more about various identities and labels and myself and stuff like that. But for, like, actually, like, tips on, like, coming out to people, I know if you feel like it's going to be a sort of safe interaction, but you're not sure, like, when to bring it up, I've heard that bringing it up while you're, like, driving in the car can be a good one, or just, like, in the car in general, because for whatever reason, just because it's sort of like a not kind of a liminal space, it's more, like, easier to have, like, kind of deeper
it's like
conversations.
It's like the shared goal. Does that make sense? Like, you're both going in the same direction, so it forms, like, a kind of sense of, I don't know, fraternity. Like,
yeah,
that sounds weird, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a little easier to talk about things sometimes when you're in the car, from what I've heard, and from my experiences, that does seem to be, like, a thing. But one of the first times I came out to my family as ace was it was like my brother, my sister, and my mom were all kind of like, we were all milling about in, like, the dining room, and like, I was on the stairs, and I was saying, like, yeah, I'm asexual, and my sister and my mom were like, oh, you're, like, really young, because, like, I'd known I was asexual since I was in, like, 2nd grade. So, like, really, really long time, because, like, back in elementary school, I was that kid everyone would, like, poke and tease and be like, oh, you have a crush on X, you have a crush on Y, you have a crush on Z, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I don't. Do I? No, I don't. I'm fairly certain I have never felt that way about anybody, and that continued on for the rest of my life. And I have dated, like, 3 people, and, like, all those times it's just like, I don't know, didn't work. I just felt nothing, which, like, I felt bad in the last one, my last relationship in particular, because, like, my girlfriend at the time was just, like, really sweet. We're still friends. I'm still friends with all of them, but just, like, you know, vibes. But with, like, telling my family, my mom in particular was like, oh, you're just a late bloomer. I was too. You'll get there eventually. Now my mom identifies as Demi. My mom came out and like, oh, everyone's like that. I'm like that. And my brother's like, I'm like that too. They're both Demi. So it's like, surprise.
Yeah. One quick
I
thing.
do.
Oh, unless you want to go home.
Oh, sorry. I had a funny childhood crush story that just really narrows home, like, the arrow spec, like arrow spec before you realized it vibes. But sorry, did you want to talk about something else?
My mind just went blank, so go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
When I was so, like, I've always been that person who, like, picked, like, okay, I'm going to say I have a crush on that one, so people stop bugging me about it. Does that make sense? So, over the years, I'm so sorry if you're watching this and you remember me, if you still recognize me, like, if you managed to find this and you knew me back then, wow, because I lived in Okinawa, Japan. So it's like, I don't even know, maybe 2005. I'm in 1st grade, and there's this kid, and I joke around, like, I'm not joking. I'm like, I think I have a crush on him. Does that make sense? And I was joking around, and I wrote, like, this, like, I'm, like, in 1st grade, right? And so I write this, like, will you marry me, Valentine? And I'm like, haha, JK, like, just kidding. JK wasn't a thing. And then I threw away the Valentine. And then, maybe JK was a thing. I was just, 7. So then I'm in class and like people are handing out Valentines, and he gives me a Valentine that says, "Will you marry me?" And it has a piece of chocolate on it. And I legit, like, like, that's the moment the crush ended, because I was like, no, not about this, not happening. So, because like I didn't actually have a crush on him, I just said that I did. And like that continued throughout like my entire childhood. I had crushes on people who I thought I should have crushes on. Yeah. So if that makes any sense, what I'm trying to say. So like, for instance, and that continue with celebrity crushes. So like the Jonas Brothers, you know, the entire like thing about like which Jonas brother was the cutest or whatever. For me, whatever Jonas brother was the cutest just kind of shifted with when everybody else's was like shifting. Does that make sense? It was like one small thing could change who the cutest one was, because I had no sense of like who was actually attractive. I was just like, okay, he's vaguely symmetrical. Sure, that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So looking back, it's very obvious that I was on the A spectrum somewhere, but I had no terminology for it.
Yeah. Well, and so like I didn't really have crushes growing up like at all ever at any point, and I honestly thought that all of my like classmates were just ridiculous and boy crazy and just being too silly and like just too wrapped up in that, and I just didn't get it at all. Like even my mom has said, looking back at like my camera, she's like, yeah, you know, actually like my younger sibling would come home and be like, oh, I have a crush on this guy, I have a crush on this person, I have a crush on this person, like all through elementary school, like even as a young little kid kind of thing. And like my mom was like, yeah, you never really did that at all. Like I don't think I ever once heard you say you had a crush on anybody, and it wasn't even like we had like a closed off relationship. Like I told my mom everything, and so she was like, yeah, you never did have a crush on anyone at all through school kind of thing. I was like, yeah, and like I even had an issue where one of my friends kind of like confided in me their crush in middle school. And then some of these boys were like, oh, you know who so-and-so's crush is. Tell us, you gotta tell us. And I was like, no, like I'm not giving my friends secrets. And they were like, well, then we're gonna tell people who you have a crush on. I just kind of like laughed at them. I was like, okay, who do I have a crush on? And they were like, oh, what? I was like, yeah, I don't, go ahead with whatever ammo you have. But I think one of the things too with the ace, like being in the ace community, something that kind of makes it hard, like, you know, figuring out exactly who you are and what your terms are, is the late bloomer sentiment. Because you then kind of feel like question yourself, like, wait, am I like actually a late bloomer? Like, do I need to just like experiment more? Do I need to just like try dating people? Like, and that was a huge thing for me too. Like, I grew up very like religious, and so I had kind of a, I don't know, temporary crisis in a sense, where I was like, am I just like, have I just taken the like no sex till marriage thing too close to heart? Like, is that all? Like, am I just like, did I just get messed up because of this religious belief, or am I actually ace? And of course now I'm kind of like, no, I'm actually ace. Like, I've been ace for my whole life. There were signs way back in the childhood kind of thing before any of that talk was brought up. So that's honestly like one of the biggest challenges I feel like with coming out in the ace spectrum, is just figuring out like it's not a phase, like even for yourself. Because there's just so much pressure that this is a phase that you start questioning, like, is this a phase? So.
Can I add on to the whole middle school, high school, like childhood experience part of crushes? Okay, so yeah, I never experienced crushes, etc. in middle school or high school. It just never happened to me. And I noticed that at some point I kind of almost grew apart from my friends because of that, because I didn't have the terminology to describe myself yet, but they looked at me and were like, you've never had a crush on anybody, you're not who I'm going to go to talk to about the crushes I have. So I feel like I almost missed out on like a lot of friendship type stuff, because they all looked at me and went, oh, I don't want to talk to you about this, without ever asking me if I'd be down to talk to them. So then I looked around and realized my friends were all dating people and just never told me, because they were just like, oh, this isn't something you'd be interested in. So I thought that was just a kind of sad part of that almost, because I like misstepped and like the typical friendship pattern almost. And I had a couple of friends in middle school that I was really close with, and I was like, oh, you have a crush on them. And I panicked about that because I was like, no, I don't. So I ended those friendships. I just stopped talking to my friends because I didn't want people to think I had a crush on them, which was not a healthy way to approach that situation, but it worked at the time. So that's a fun story.
Yeah. I definitely relate to that a lot because just like I also had like a lot of difficulty like sort of connecting with my peers all throughout like elementary, middle, and high school because I wasn't feeling the same things they were and I couldn't relate to them on that level. And that was sort of a very base level of human connection that I just like I couldn't understand their feelings in that, and it made me feel very like ostracized from everybody else just because like they'd be like, especially like the very few sleepovers I went to, they'd have the like everybody like talk about your crushes or like do you have a crush on anybody, and I'd be like, nope, never did, not a zip, zero. And like even when I did start like dating in middle school, like I dated a guy. It was like a middle school date, and we didn't even actually go on any dates or do anything. It was just kind of sort of like a title, and we'd pass each other in the hall, and that was it. So that I think that kind of like emphasizes the fact that like me being in that relationship, I didn't really like care about it because it was the guy had asked me out, and he had been my friend for a while, so I was like, oh, sure, I'll try it. And then we broke up. I broke up with him just because like I wasn't feeling it. I felt like he was being rude because of other reasons, stuff like that. And then literally later that day, I started dating an online friend of mine. We did for like a couple months. Again, same situation. Nothing really. We didn't like go on dates or anything. It was just kind of like a title that we used. It didn't mean anything. And then much later, I was like, okay, like maybe it's not guys. The second person I dated ended up not being a guy, but like that's a whole different thing. So I tried dating a girl, and that was sort of like what solidified for me that like, yeah, no, this like I I really genuinely care about this person. Like she asked me out, she was like a good friend of mine for a long time, and I was like, yeah, I'm just like she came to my house and she was my prom date. So we like interacted a lot, and it was like one of the first times I actually went on like a proper date. I like kissed and stuff, and that was it kind of like really it was like hammer hitting the nail. It's just like, yeah, no, this is not my vibes. So that was sort of like my experience with like kind of forcing myself to test the waters to see like, am I really arrow or like what's the situation?
Yeah.
And also just like the whole like it's a phase thing. Show me a permanent state of the self, Mom. Yeah.
Before we head on to the questions, I just wanted to add into like when I was growing up, I was like a hopeless romantic. Like I was that person, but like my crushes lasted like literal years though, like on the same person. It wasn't like I was moving on from one crush to another very, very quickly. But then when I got into an actual relationship, it was like, wait, I don't want to do the same things that everyone else is doing. And like what Hazel said too, with having the religious background, I'm like, do I actually feel this way? Or is this because this is what I was told to not do while growing up? So it was like a disconnect from like all my other friends who were part of the LGBT plus community, where they're going on dates and they're having these different kinds of attractions to people. But at the time, I was the only person that I knew that was ace. So I didn't really have a connection with other people within the ace community as well until I got onto this Discord actually and got introduced to more.
This is I hope a short answer, but Isadora Jane just asked like a question kind of caused by the lack of representation in education, but all, like, can you be arrow but not ace? Which is yes, as far as I'm aware at least. Like I feel like it's almost like an XY axis, like ace, arrow, and you can be anywhere on that spectrum. You could be just arrow, you could be just ace, you could be kind of both. So
This
Princess is
actually
doing.
brings me this brings me to a topic that I wanted to discuss, which is the split attraction model, which is very popular in the aro ace community or aspect community, because basically it's separating romantic attraction versus sexual attraction. That's like the split. So yes, you absolutely can be aro but not ace. And that's also where you might see people who identify as like bi and ace, like biromantic, asexual, or like
Okay, thank you, Lovey.
maybe even like homosexual, biromantic, or just like having those sort of like sexuality is one thing, but romantic orientation is another, and just how those might be different. That's the sort of split attraction model. Like if you like make a Punnett square or something, that's like one like column is like sexual attraction, the other is like romantic attraction, and you list out like whatever, and you like check off the boxes, that type of thing. That's kind of the split attraction model, at least my understanding of it. Yes, Harvey.
So I just want to note that not every ace or aro person uses the split attraction model. I know people who identify as non-split attraction model aromantic, and so like the aromantic part kind of encompasses like all of their like sexuality, because they don't feel like, they're just like, I'm just aro, like that's it. Or same thing with ace, they're like, I'm just ace. So I think it's good to note, it's like people who are like, I'm just bi. It's like not like they're biromantic, bisexual. They just think that they just like the one word.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make a note of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, again, it always comes down to like, use the terms you are comfortable with, and the terms are there to help you define aspects that you want defined, but you don't necessarily define everything about yourself. So.
Can we talk a little bit about rep?
Yes, I would love to talk about rep.
Okay, so somebody in the comments asked, what are some books or series with great ace representation? I personally really like the Sidekick series, how they represented asexuality, because I really felt like I really vibed with it. And there's also good representation of like a queer platonic relationship, and how like sometimes queer platonic feelings can get mixed up for romantic feelings. And I just really enjoyed that book series. So I highly recommend it. I will find the author and I will drop it into the chat. But
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to read that now.
Don't actually know of any like book series. I might not read any book series that I feel like have ace rep at all in it. The closest we get is Raina and Rick Riordan, and that's like not necessarily like they don't expressly say that she's ace in the book series, but her experiences were really relatable for me, and like I'm just super excited that she's like, you know, Rick Riordan has confirmed that he wrote her ace coded, because I do think that her experiences as an ace character are really relatable to people who identify as ace.
Yes.
So like I'm proud of that, but I don't really know of any like, you know, canonized media that has canon ace.
There's not
people
really
in it.
much mainstream media that
Yeah.
has ace characters. There is a lot of books. If you look, there is a book I know that's out there about a black ace girl, but it's harder to come by.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Ace recommendation book stuff is always great. Like honestly, I think that should be talked about more, because we need the books that already have that, and the media that already has ace representation to become a little bit more mainstream would be great, and also introducing more mainstream ace characters would also be fantastic. Like I would love to see an ace character in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe at some point.
Yes.
That would be a success story for me in a sense. Even if Disney could like, you know, confirm some ace characters would be great. Like
Yeah,
I
because we have some
possibly,
like. Oh, sorry.
oh sorry, I possibly
No.
see Elsa as ace.
I
Like
was gonna say that.
yeah, I
Our
connect with
brains.
Elsa.
Our brains.
Elsa,
Is
like
an
I
ace
love
I'm
icon.
gonna mention
all
that.
interpretations of Elsa so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. I have a hard time seeing Elsa as anything but ace, just because of like, I don't know how strongly I connect to her. And again, everybody's headcanons is valid. I just possibly, because I connect so strongly with Elsa's experiences, I really can't see her as anything but just like an ace. But that's a different matter. And like, for example, my younger sibling brought this up, is that Merida almost seems like an ace coded character, but I personally never really felt like Merida was an ace character. Like she could be, and I'd be down for people to see her as ace arrow. I just personally didn't find much connection on that front of my personality. Like to me, it felt almost more like Merida was just like I want to find true love, not forced love. So that made it a little bit less like, of a clear ace representation. Not that she couldn't be ace too. I just didn't, find ace rep with her. The same reason I don't find ace rep with Moana. Like, just because a character's not paired off doesn't always mean they're ace.
Yeah.
But also, you still can find, like, I know people do identify with Merida as an ace icon, and that's also great. So
I really
it's
like
a
Ace
spectrum.
Merida.
Princess, I love you so much.
Listen, there's also puns in calling her an arrow. Oh, like I
see
love
it.
that. That's also like how I am like kind of vibing with Artemis. Like both as like a Percy Jackson fan and also as a pagan who legitimately worships Apollo and Artemis. Just like I vibe so much with Artemis, and also just literally an arrow ace.
Yeah. I think
I love you
Archery.
so
honestly,
much.
like the biggest thing too for me is reason why like Elsa was the first like Disney ace rep I saw, despite having like Merida and Moana and that kind of thing. Is just like I don't know, her songs really connect really strong with me on being ace. Particularly Show Yourself if was into, and also Let It Go is kind of makes me feel that ace vibe in a sense. Like she's literally talking about like this is kind of a negative trope too in a sense like ace people are often all criticized for being like cold-hearted and that kind of thing, and so the fact that like Elsa is like struggling with being seen this way by other people just because of who she is like really speaks heavily to me on like ace experience, and seeing her just being like, you know what, no, this is who I am, I'm accepting it, it doesn't make me a monster or a bad person, like it makes me me, and that's good. And it's I really wish we had canonized ace Elsa, but
Yes.
There's some questions in our Zoom chat, but I have a hard time pulling that up. If you guys want to pull that up
I
for
have
me,
a
please.
couple I've been putting in the chat. Kind of along that line. There was headcanons of what character. TC's scratching her ear and messing with my computer.
Do I have?
Sorry. We have from Reneem, we have Ace headcanon or Ace spec headcanons or canon characters. I also saw
Am I allowed to talk about Ace spec Jason?
You better.
Yeah.
And then there was also from Reneem, when this first time you saw yourself represented as characters you had canon as, or saw yourself represented or characters you had canon as Ace, and from Mitosis, puns, opinions on lack of representation in the Ace community, as well as Ace erasure in media such as Jughead or SpongeBob. So like, just
okay.
really,
Let's talk about.
You talk about Jason.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to talk. So first, I want to address like the first time I talked about this on the rep panel last week, but the first time I saw myself in media and like felt represented was when I was reading Little Women as a kid, because I just really connected with Jo in the whole like I don't want a relationship type thing, and she just was like very boyish, and I really love Jo March so much. I would die for Jo March. That's that. But I really headcanon Jason as A-spec because we don't have any canon confirmation that he was in any relationships before Heroes of Olympus, and so as somebody who has been in a relationship, because I felt like it was expected of me to be in the relationship, I like Jason being in a relationship with Piper, and like it kind of has the vibes of everybody expecting him to be something, and so he tries to be it, which is kind of something that you see throughout Jason's storyline. Like why he joins the Greeks is because the Romans expect him to be like this perfect soldier, and he doesn't really feel comfortable with that. And so like I think that and minor Tyrant's Tomb spoilers, I'm gonna raise my hand. When I put my hand down, the Tyrant Tomb spoiler is over, so I'm gonna give you 3 seconds to mute yourself. so Jason, when he breaks up with Piper, he doesn't I know he is like going to die, but like he isn't as heartbroken about Piper and his breakup as I feel like he should be. He feels more torn up that it didn't work out like she wanted it to. And I think that Jason, if he had lived longer, probably would have ended up realizing that he was on the ace spectrum. And I really like to play with that with my cosplay of Jason. I tend to wear my ace ring when I cosplay Jason and things like that. So, okay, spoilers are over.
Kind of related to that, something, oh gosh, I think I am half forgetting it, but also like kind of vibing with Jason, like he was like quite literally forced into the relationship because of
the hero memory thing.
Yeah, and the fact that he was kind of like playing into what Piper wanted. Like we get the whole like scene on the roof with like the two of them hanging out, because that was specifically a false memory that Piper had been given, and it was something that was like very prominent to her, and like so Jason recreated that, but it was kind of just I agree with you so much about A-Spec Jason. And then
I have a lot of feelings about it. Okay.
I get you.
And a very common one that's also in the reward verse I want to address that Princess has the
I have
Tumblr
the
URL for is Arrow Ace Leo.
Arrow Ace Leo,
which I love very much.
Okay, can I want to talk about Arrow Ace Leo.
Go on.
Okay. So basically, because Leo has this whole like false persona entirely like dedicated to sort of like playing up aspects of himself where he feels like he's lacking. Like he has trouble like connecting with people, so he like acts like a ladies man, and like all like he has trouble being social, so he'll play up being like, oh, everybody loves me, I'm like so flirty and everything. And I feel like that really plays into like just sort of like I relate to a lot in that like sort of like not having attraction and just like lacking attraction would be another aspect where he feels like a little quote unquote broken. So he sort of like plays that up more and is like, because especially like in the scenes where we see him like having his guard let down, he's like literally completely like up, like he just flips to like a completely different person, because he's basically, his persona is basically the opposite of himself. And so I feel like the fact that part of his persona is him being so like extra flirtatious, but when he has his guard down, he's like zero like mention of that, the only exception being Calypso. But also Leo has this whole aspect of needing to feel like worthwhile to people, like he has to like give them something to feel like he's like worthy of like being in a group. Like he needs to feel like he brings something to the table to be accepted. So in the case of Calypso, a lot of his feelings seem to be that like he can offer something to Calypso, and Calypso doesn't really care about anything else about him. Just like she doesn't care that he's like what his true self is, but like she accepts him because he has something of worth to her. And that's just like, Casey, do you mind not sitting on my microphone? Just that sort of like vibe that like Leo feels like he needs to be worth something, and with Calypso he found like something he can give her that she finds worthy, and so that's sort of like what he bases the entire relationship on. And then he goes to like further just kind of like twist himself into like whatever mold Calypso needs him to be to make her happy. And like there's a lot of like indication that it's not a completely healthy relationship, and also the fact that like Calypso's island literally has love magic to sort of like force the individuals to fall in love with each other. That was always just something that like I just really clicked with Leo, like both in like aspec vibes, and then also in the fact that he's very definitely autistic coded. Same with Nico. Like,
I
autistic
vibed so
vibes, and
hard
then-
with what you're laying down here, Princess, because those are the same reasons like I vibed with Leo so hard, was like him trying to put on the like front and then like yes, just yes, that's it.
And then for also first like time I saw myself represented in characters was definitely the Hunters of Artemis. Like nowadays I do have like a couple like issues with like bad tropes and stuff, with like all the hunters being like very young and having them take a vow of celibacy and being very explicitly like anti-romance, and how those fall into some like bad aspect tropes. But also there are aspects of that that do connect strongly to aspect people, myself included, and just being a very young aspect person, seeing this group of people who are like, who needs romance? We're gonna go hunt a deer or something in the woods and just vibe with wolves. And I'm just like, sign me up, give me a falcon and a wolf, and I'll leave right now. I can throw axes. I don't know much about archery, but I can throw axes, so like I got a projectile weapon. Please tell me that counts.
Sorry, one of my friends is in the comments talking about never having thought about Nico as autistic and suddenly vibing. I'm like, I thought we've had this conversation before. I swear we've talked about this before.
Nico. He like
that's a different panel, Princess. That's a different panel.
We'll have
Please,
a
can we have an
Nordic
autistic
panel.
panel?
Yeah, we'll have a Nordic budget panel at some point. So like with me, I did talk a lot about us already, but like so with me and representation, I've always kind of vibed with the idea of having like not every single piece of media will like revolve around romantic attraction or sexual attraction or any kind of attraction. Like to me, I remember going and seeing. Okay, so I don't see Moana as necessarily like an ace icon or era icon, but when I saw Moana, I remember after the movie was over, I had like this weird sense of like peace almost. I was like, I don't know what it was, but something was different about that movie. And then I was like, she didn't have any. There was no romance subplot at all at any point in the movie, like anywhere. Like even in Brave, there's like a love plot in a sense where they're trying to get her like date someone or like get married.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't even mention that at all in Moana, and like that was a vibe for me, just seeing like some media that's not like forcing romantic and sexual attraction as like the norm. And forcing like a happy ever after is getting your prince. Like if we could stop forcing that in every media, which I thought Moana did wonderfully. Like I just never felt at any point that there was any kind of romantic plots in Moana, which I liked. Not that we need to get rid of all romantic plots, just it'd be nice to have more of those movies. And like for example, I also like when I'm a huge fan of Peggy Carter. Not that again she's not necessarily an icon for this stuff, but just I remember being really annoyed with people like trying to immediately like pair her off again in the Agent Carter TV show. I was like, can she just like vibe and be a badass without like being in another relationship? Like she just lost Cap, guys. Can she just like vibe and be cool and just like hang out with her best friend Jarvis?
I'm here for that.
Yeah,
I'm here with that.
like
I'm here with
vibe
that.
with Jarvis, guys. Stop.
Listen, Agent
Yeah.
Carter. Agent Carter was one of my like favorite shows, and I really wish that like there hadn't been so much focus on the romantic subplot, because
Yeah.
I really loved seeing Peggy Carter just pick names and take ass. Wait, no, that's not right.
I liked season 1 of Agent Carter a lot, because I feel like the plot was like Dan or Sousa didn't want to develop for season 2. Part of my issue was more of the fandom being like super forceful about like she has to start dating Andy, or she has to start dating Daniel, or she has to start dating. I'm like, can she just like chill? Can you just let her vibe? Like she just lost someone and
like give her time to mourn.
A badass. So can we just let her be a badass?
Yeah.
Like please stop trying to pair her off immediately. That's fine. I mean, I'm a huge Steggy shipper too. Like I love Peggy and Steve, but also let women just be by themselves, please, and be badasses like Moana.
Yes.
Although it's actually interesting because it's only recently that women are actually allowed to, like, this is addressed in the Little Women movie, but in film for a long time, women who were in movies had to be married by the end of the movie.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's actually I find film history really fascinating. So I just think it's interesting that like that is something that is new in media.
Yeah.
Is that our women don't have to be married by the end of the movie
Yeah,
or
and I
like in a
think
relationship.
that also speaks to a sense too, like media's changing, and so like there's still gonna be like the fan community is still gonna a lot of the times expect that in order for there to be a happy ending, it has to end in romance or like a romantic plot, which we just need to kind of move away from. Like especially like I'm very happy that Disney. I mean, we had Anna end up with Kristoff and that kind of thing, but letting Elsa again kind of like remain single throughout the movies, great. Having Moana not even have any romantic subplots, great. Having Merida not have any like fight for her own hand, be her own person, great. More of that, please. And honestly, Pixar does do a pretty good job of that usually about making it less about the romance and more about like the story and other relationships in the story too. Like Buzz and Woody, best friends. Yeah, Jesse's there too, and there's plots with Jesse, but also it focuses a lot on just friendship and other types of relationships. So, anyways, Princess has had their hand up for a while
Sorry.
now.
Yeah, so I was just that reminded me a lot of like always she says that always like my favorite Disney movies were like Brave, Brother Bear, Meet the Robinsons, Emperor's New Emperor's New Groove. Just the movies, and that was like part of why I was really excited for Moana to come out when it was coming out, was it was specifically like also like Lilo and Stitch. It was always movies where there was absolutely like they didn't fall in love at the end. The like focus wasn't on romance or like a romantic subplot. It was like about family, especially like particularly family, because I am a sucker for found family tropes, and like familial relations and platonic stuff. But like that, or just like something that isn't romance. I'm so sorry if you can hear Casey grooming herself.
I can't hear Casey, so don't worry.
We can't hear. Don't worry. You're good.
Okay, but yeah, it's just like stuff like that was always like really important to me, and that's why those were like my favorite characters. And that's also something I have an issue with the Percy Jackson series, is it literally like Rick has this whole issue where he has to pair up everyone.
Yeah.
And it especially like I was really like I was kind of mad about the whole like Leo situation, because I was like, let him like come to terms with being the seventh wheel and like being okay with being by himself. And like, why does he have to end up in this like relationship? Like Calypso wasn't even necessarily like, she wasn't a plot hole, because at the end of the last Olympian, Percy did say, let Calypso off her island, and the gods were like, yep. But then in Heroes Olympus is like, actually, we're gonna make a plot hole here. She did not get let off her island. And like, that doesn't really like make sense. And so it's really like backtracking on stuff to insert a romantic plot that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And then like,
I really vibe with something that Ace has said before, is like, let Leo and Calypso realize that they're not like good in a relationship together once Calypso's in the moral world, and Leo be like, oh, actually I think I'm Arrow Ace, and Calypso be like, I'm a lesbian.
Yes.
Yes, that'd be great. A great plot line. I would fully support that. I do want to point out too, I think, I don't know, so I've always been like Pixar a lot as a like production company and a studio company, and they do have movies that have romantic plots, but they also have a lot of movies that don't. Like Finding Nemo is, I don't think there's really any romantic plots in Finding Nemo. It's all about finding your son. I mean, Pixar does a lot of family-based stuff, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And like moving on from things too, like in Up, Carl has to kind of learn how to like exist without Ellie in his life anymore, and find out that there's more to life than just like that connection. And it's a really great movie to go through like the stages of grief. Onward, which if you haven't seen yet, it's amazing, and I really love Onward. Also, I mean, now I'm just kind of reflecting too and see there's a lot of movies that don't have romantic subplots, and those are kind of the movies that I tend to enjoy more. And like I loved seeing Onward because it was such a great movie, just about
I cried during Onward. I cried so many times
kills
because
me.
I relate to the big character, the big brother character, so much. Like,
yeah. Well, and it's just like sorry.
I cried so much. I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on crying.
Onward was a really, really good movie, and like for example, one of my favorite movies, honestly, like for reals, is Cars 3, which there is kind of a plot in Cars 1 a little bit. Like Lightning is kind of just like the opposite of it's pretty problematic, but the love plot in both movies is never a big thing in Cars 1 and 3, and I really liked Cars 3 just because it really just kind of focused on Lightning kind of realizing that he needs to be a better person and helping Ramirez also grow and become a better person. And at no point is it like a romantic movie at all. It's just about character growth and development, and showing that you can have character growth and development beyond romance is also really important. So, yeah, basically, we need more movies that just focus on all types of relationships, particularly friendships and family. So. Oh yes, wait, sorry. I love that term. Like platonic and familiar love movies make me
Yes.
happy. Yes.
Yes.
Love can be
Yes,
in the movie,
yes,
but let
yes,
it be
yes.
about like family and friends as well as romantic.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now
Actually, sorry, I was just gonna go like on that topic. Do we
Yeah.
want to quickly define platonic versus aesthetic versus familial?
Oh, the different
yeah.
attractions. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Go
just like
for
quick,
it.
quick rundown. Familial, family. Platonic is like friends. Aesthetic is just kind of like vibes, like appearance, or like not romantic, but just kind of like, ooh, that's pretty, or like, ooh, I like your hair, and like
I
stuff
just
like
think
that.
it's neat.
Yeah, it's literally
that
I just think
like
it's
Soul
neat.
said in the last hour,
Yes.
like Soul said in the last hour, I really want to draw you.
That is such a mood for me.
But,
I have that mood way
Princess, I
too
love
much.
you.
yeah, I have a friend. Sorry, we're friends. I have a friend that's bi, and we were talking about like our different levels of attraction, that kind of thing. And she kind of found like gave me the best terminology ever, which is like she's like, for me, I see someone and I think, wow, I want to be with them, and I'm like, but for me, when I see someone, I'm like, wow, I kind of want to be them, not in an unhealthy way, just kind of like, you're really like, okay, Gemma Chan. Is amazing, and I really think her face is super symmetrical, and honestly probably would be who I'd see in Aphrodite, just because I think she's got a way of like, aesthetically attractive looking person. But at the same time, I would never necessarily like. I don't have any like attraction or feelings to Gemma Chan. I just think that she's really pretty. Like, yeah, and I also usually have a harder time finding men pretty than I find like women pretty, just because, and not because I'm a lesbian, just because I don't usually think I want to have a strong jawline and a beard. I usually think I want to have a symmetrical face and like pretty eyeliner, and like because I'm very feminine. So yes. Anyways, though, sorry, I took a small detour tangent.
Yeah, oh, that's definitely it. Also, sorry, this is completely off topic, but related to the other thing, somebody said consider Nico being autistic instead of ADHD, and I raised to you both.
Yeah, I know. I said that. I actually said that in the comments. I was like, consider ADHD and autistic, and her name was like, yes.
Yeah, because like I vibe so much with both aspects of Nico as ADHD and autistic, but that is also besides the point. We love a queer autistic ADHD boy. Yeah, and then yeah, but romantic versus sexual, that's also kind of pretty, that one's kind of well known. Like romantic is kind of like, oh, I want to like go on a date with you, I want to like kiss you and stuff like that, or like whatever. Whereas sexual is, I want to do the do. I want a horizontal tango or whatever. all the silly terms that I use because I think they're fun.
And just adding on to that, like there's many different ways to find out, like not find out, there's many ways to express the kind of love, your own love language. Not everyone speaks the same one, and I feel like someone else here could go more in depth than I can.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I do. I mean, I can go into that a little bit. I want to make sure that we hit all the levels of attraction really quick. Because we said platonic, we said platonic, aesthetic, and we've touched on romantic and sexual, but there's also altruist, which is kind of like you don't really, there's two different definitions that go around, which is you kind of can't tell whether it's platonic or romantic, or like it's kind of its own thing where you're like, oh, like quasi-platonic, or queer platonic type of attraction. And then there's also sensual attraction, which is like, oh, I really want to like snuggle that person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or like kiss that person. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can just be like, oh, like I think like kissing them would be really nice.
Kind of like the touch star of like, you come here.
Give cuddles. Yeah, no. So it's so there's different levels of attraction. Different people define them in different ways. And yeah, I can go on and on about what different types of things. Me and Hazel have talked about doing a series of education things, so might go into
At some
that.
point.
But
I think
at some point, I have to
yeah,
work on
we
lesson
have a
plans.
lot of
It's fine.
stuff in our lives. I think there was another question too, unless we had more on this topic. But let's see, from Isadora Jane, talk about like thoughts on discrimination of people's sexuality, asexuality because of their gender, like men being discriminated more because of society ideas. I don't obviously understand that part of it because I'm female, identify as female, but I do know, like, for example, people get confused when they find out that I'm ace and married. They're like, wait, how does that work? Like, my younger sibling apparently had someone, like, right, they mentioned that I was ace, and the friend's like, wait, isn't your sister married? And my response was just like, yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. Like, it's fine. And so I've personally experienced some discrimination too, in a sense, because people just don't understand how I'm married. And like, I've even had a toxic family member kind of insinuate that I was like lying to my husband or something like that by being ace and being married, which I was like, you don't know our relationship. Like, he was fully aware of what me being ace meant before we got married. Like, we're good. Our relationship's fine. That's not an issue. And so I definitely think discrimination can exist against just like how you behave with your sexuality, that kind of thing. And people trying to, again, box you into your sexuality and being like, you can't be this and this. When a lot of times, like, it's not. It's a spectrum. It's a gray area. So, and obviously also, I think men probably do experience more discrimination and, like, invalidation of being ace.
So going off this question, I do want to note, like, as a trans ace person, something that I've dealt with a lot in the community, from on both the trans and the ace side, and this is also kind of some ace-phobic rhetoric that's spread in specifically like TERFy communities. The concept that you're misconstruing dysphoria as a lack of sexual attraction or sex repulsion. Does that make sense? So for me, I've also like tried to like figure out how to for me, it's been a thing of like figuring out, how do I say this? For me, it's been a journey to figure out what has been dysphoria and what has been a lack of sexual attraction or sex repulsion. And so I think that, so what I'm trying to say is I have experienced that type of discrimination in the community before, of people like excluding me, being like, oh, you're just experiencing dysphoria, or oh, you're not actually ace, you're just or you're not actually trans, you're just ace, and stuff like that. So it goes beyond just like guys being just, because like I have also seen guys be excluded, but like cis men. So
I think
yeah,
the
anyway.
thing with the guys is, like, it's kind of a lot of times, especially in FSI and that kind of thing, like, guys are expected to be like sexually attracted to everybody in a sense, which is a huge not true at all in a sense, and actually quite harmful to like everybody involved. And yeah, I think honestly, like, pretty much everybody has probably faced invalidation because of their sexuality at some point in their life. Just because, especially as an ace community, we seem to get hate from a lot of places, not only from outside the community, but also from inside the community, which is almost worse in a sense. Like, I've seen a lot of people on Tumblr trying to claim that being happy about ace Reina is somehow lesbophobic, which makes no sense to me because I don't see how those are mutually exclusive. And
you
just
can be
because
both.
you're happy about representation doesn't mean you're being harmful. I mean, yeah.
And also, like, claiming Reina as a lesbian erases a lot of her past, and I have a lot of feelings on this.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This
Princess,
This
have
is
a
bi
little mini rant.
erasure. I
Yeah,
see it
okay.
as bi erasure.
Yeah, no, okay, so there's like, actually that's also similar with people claiming Clarice is a lesbian when she canonically has a boyfriend that she cares about, and it's like, yes, she was probably in love with Selena because of the whole like Patroclus and Achilles nearance and that like very, very strong symbolism between that. And yes, those characters are meant to represent Patroclus and Achilles, but also Patroclus and Achilles also had female lovers in their life, and so yes, while they were probably attracted to each other, they also had female lovers, and you can't really erase that, and you need to acknowledge that. And same with Clarice. Yes, she might have been, or probably was in love with Selena, but that doesn't erase the fact that she is dating Chris now, and that she is likely attracted to both. And same with like Reyna. The entire reason Rick said that he does not view her as a lesbian and does not want to describe her as a lesbian, he's like explained this in depth before, that he has in the past, he wrote her having attraction to men in mind in previous books, and he knows that there are bad tropes of like, he doesn't want to be lesbian, like phobic to lesbians, because he wrote Reyna as being attracted to men, and he doesn't want to perpetuate the trope of lesbians only being lesbians because they couldn't get a guy. And he's very aware of that trope, and he doesn't want to perpetuate it. And so that's the whole reason why he didn't write her as a lesbian, but also in her being ace does not relate to her, because he specifically said that she's an allo ace, or at least that's how he views her and wrote her. That is like, that works perfectly well alongside what has been established so far with her like romantic orientation and all that jazz. So
Well,
there's like,
and, I also feel like we need to be better about, so because a lot of people have been making some pretty proofless claims against Rick Warren in a sense. So this is not the same situation as other authors making different mistakes. Like Rick Warren is not going in and saying that this is how it is and that's the only way it is and you're invalid if you think anything else. It's actually doing quite opposite of that. Yeah, he's saying like, in every kind of tweet I've seen from him, he's kind of saying, he's like, this is how I've written the character and this is how I like personally view the character, because that's like where my perspective like leads me. But also, if you have evidence in the text, which most people are headcanon on, like, oh, I think it's this way because of this instance in the book, then yeah, that's a completely valid headcanon. And he's trying his best right now to make everybody feel valid without invalidating other people. Like, I think if he, I don't know, it just, yeah. I have thoughts. I have opinions.
Yeah, okay. Just in particular, like, I know we're all thinking of you know who, but she who shall not be named, but just that whole the difference between the two is very important to distinct, I feel like, because on one hand, it's claiming this representation when it does not exist, and it is actively ignored in series and like contradicted even, and it's being claimed specifically for brownie points, where in Rick's case, he is saying, this is how I personally view it, but I do not think everyone has to view it that way, and I understand this does not count as representation. This is just how I like view it in my head, and that was what I had in mind while writing it. But I understand it is not in the text, and you do not have to view it that way, because once whatever's in the text is in the text, and whatever you draw from the text is what you draw from the text. That is what is there, and that is what counts, not what I say on Twitter. And I feel like that's very responsible of him, and it's a good way to go about things. Like, that is the correct way to go about things, because he's not,
and like, what's really important too, I feel like, is keeping in mind, like, there's some toxic and like, so within the reading community and like the like English community, basically, like as a, not as a language but as a study, my favorite thing I've heard, so from, I've listened to the Vlogbrothers and like John and Hank Green, who are both authors, and like one of the things that John Green has said before is that after a book is published, author intent no longer matters. Like, it doesn't matter what the author's intent was in the eyes of the piece of literature. The only thing that matters is like what you get from the text. So ultimately, like, authors can say whatever they want after a book's published, but their time to actually make changes is past. And so, like, ultimately, anything that Rick Riordan or She Who Must Not Be Named or any author says after a book is published does not matter in the eyes of reading that text. What matters is how, like, the reader's connection to the text and what the reader sees in the text. But I think Rick Riordan has done a good job of kind of advocating as well, just in the way he talks about it. He's kind of talked about, like, if you can draw a conclusion based on what's written, then that conclusion is valid. So.
And also the way he sort of like supports voices of other people in the community. Like, he has the whole Presents series in which he like sort of raises the voices of other authors who can better represent minorities than he can. He's been like retweeting a bunch of, or like tweeting out a bunch of threads about like more like representation.
Recommendations.
Recommendations in
For
books and like representation of those like authors and those stories. And like I wrote a whole open letter essay about bad aspect tropes that are present in aspect coded characters in the series, and he retweeted it and he said, yes, I see this, I understand, and I'm going to like, I will keep this in mind. And like now a couple weeks later he's like, Reina's like, I view Reina as an allo ace character, and I'm just like, yes.
Oh, also that brings up a point too in a sense. Like maybe I don't know, like I have no idea where Rick's education is at and like what level it's at different points in his writing career. I mean I think everybody learns new things all the time. I'm in the community and I'm always learning new things about the community. So like there's a chance that Rick Riordan never really understood what asexual was and didn't understand that as a community until kind of like Princess brought it to his attention, or other people are like I don't know what point he learned this. And so it could be almost in a similar way how like I didn't know I was the term ace, but I was ace. It could be like I think authors definitely can go back and be like, oh, okay, the way I wrote this character definitely reads like this character is ace. Like I'm a writer myself, and honestly, we don't always know our characters the best. Like a lot of times we just get this idea of this like half-formed person, and as we write, we figure out who this character is. So, as an author myself, on writing that kind of thing, it's a lot of times a discovery process as well for me. So like I'm still discovering who my characters are as I write them. So I might not always know, and it is good to try to keep those things in mind when you're writing. But I also think it's okay for like an author to kind of be like, oh yes, that is the term for this character. That is how this character is written. That fits this character. So,
Reina, you have something to say?
Yes, I did. And I just wanted to add on that, like, since we were referring to Rick's writing specifically about Reina, she was ace coded enough for people within the ace community to recognize that and form their own headcanon. Like, no matter what kind of romantic, like, that's up to you guys too. And also, you could still have your women-loving women content, but you don't have to erase like their past relationships that they've had towards like men or other genders. And also, please don't speak up for a community that you're not in, because there were several people who were saying like, oh, because you're within the ace community, you should feel this way. I know like Hazel touched up on that a bit earlier, but it's like, who are you to tell us what we should feel good about and what we should hate? And like, you're not in our position. And even then, like, we have so little representation, so we will be squeezing the heck out of this one. Go ahead, Princess.
Yes, I just wanted to also add with like related to like characters kind of like doing their own things like outside of like what the author intent is. Like I've definitely had a couple of OCs where I made them with like a specific like they're gonna be this like orientation, and then like halfway through the role play it's like, oh, she's a lesbian. Whoopsie daisy, how did that happen?
yeah.
But like just kind of like jumps out of your, and I have a feeling that might have been also what happened with Nico, because in the first series we do see a lot of evidence of Nico, like it's never stated, especially because the first series is from Percy's perspective, but we do see a lot of like Nico very clearly has a crush on Percy in retrospect, and I feel like that was something Rick kind of acknowledged and like noticed, especially since he has described Nico as being sort of like partially inspired by some of his students, and just like he noticed that kind of like happen almost possibly by accident or purposely. I don't know what is in his head when he was writing, but you also, another thing is just like how the series has grown and how Rick has educated himself over time. We see that sort of growth and how he'll like sort of like half retcon things as he's learned more. And I feel like that's also very important because like, especially like even just recently on Twitter, like people were saying like, yeah, some people interpret Artemis as a goddess as in mythology just alone by itself as either arrow ace or like sapphic ace or something along those lines, and there are like these myths that like sort of go and support that. And Rick has said, oh, thank you for telling me, I have some research to do, let me like show me all those like sapphic Artemis like myths. I want to like learn more about this side of like the interpretation of Artemis. Like that doesn't even validate how he wrote Artemis as Aroace coded, but also it's just another part of the picture, and just like education is important. Yes, Harvey.
I just wanted to say that we have been going for quite a while now,
Yeah, we
and
have.
I was wondering if you guys wanted to kind of have anything that you want to touch on before we wrap up.
Yeah,
I
so
just want to add on a quick thing since we're talking about Rick's writing. Like, it's okay to appreciate the representation you have and still be critical of it. Like what Princess said about the aegis of the goddess of Artemis. Like, Rick's writing is an endgame, and he's trying to provide us like by uplifting other authors. And it's okay to be critical of him, but you don't have to go out of your way to bash the rest of the community about it.
yeah.
Okay, continue.
And also alongside when criticizing someone for what they've done, like how they're like falling into bad tropes or things like that, you don't need to like immediately cancel somebody. Just like understand how to like, don't immediately attack someone. You need to understand how to sort of appropriately come forward and like have like your sort of like concise like explanation of how like what was wrong, how it's harmful, like, and possibly like where things like the particular things that are harmful that could be fixed. Like in my open letter, I tried to be very like professional and include like resources to like educate. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to write your own books, but these are issues that are present in your books that are like falling into some bad tropes, and I understand you probably did not mean to do this and that you might not be educated on the subject, but these are like, these can be harmful, and these are like why they're harmful things, like common experiences that ace people get told or have to face in discrimination and stuff. And just that's how it is, and how to sort of like go about quote unquote fixing it without actually telling someone how to fix it. Just like, here are places where you can reliably educate yourself, and I'm telling you now why these things are bad, so please like think about it. And Rick said, yes, thank you, I will think about it. And that's sort of like a good way for that conversation to go.
Yeah, when we're having these kinds of conversations, you want to stay like professional, because it's more likely for someone to accept the education that they're receiving from you without us being aggressive about it.
Yeah, one of the worst things that can happen is if you go into an argument assuming malice when ignorance can suffice. It's initially acting aggressive towards someone because of something that's happened usually only results in the other party doubling down on their ideals because they feel like they're being personally attacked, and that is the worst way to go about things. So it's very important to sort of like try to go in easy and just stay as, even if it's absolutely infuriating, you want to try and stay calm, because worst case scenario, if the situation goes bad, they're going to be possibly more unwilling to learn about the situation and how they were being harmful, and that's not something you want to get into.
Something I want to say before I go is I know that the last hour talked about AVEN or asexuality.org. And while I do think it is a good resource when you are beginning your journey, I would be cautious as to what you see on the website, because it's not the be all end all of asexuality. There are other sources out there, and the forums on there can get kind of exclusionary. So and while they're a good spot, like, just be cautious and careful. And that goes with any online community you find. But one that I've really enjoyed, pardon my French, I will take the one F word for our PG-13 panel, is the blog Fuck Yeah, Asexual on Tumblr. It's just one word. Hazel will be dropping their Discord server in the chat for me, and the Tumblr is I'll also drop the Tumblr in the chat. the server is very large. It is over. Over. English is hard. It is over 3,000 members. I joined a year ago when there was only 1,000 members, but it's a large community. There's good resources. People are always willing to talk about their experiences there, and it's a good place if you're looking for people to connect with. So yeah, I would say that's my piece on resources and the like. And also Princess has a thread on Twitter, which has really good resources too. And it's the ACE essay that they wrote for Rick as well, which I also highly recommend.
It's super
Yeah,
good reading.
it's I have 2 threads on that post. One being the transcript thread of the actual like essay because I put it in images, and then the other being a sort of resource thread which has a multitude of things like Avon is on there, whatisasexuality.com, the Trevor Project, various Wikipedia pages, there's like a comic or 2 on there, like or like articles just kind of going over some basic stuff. There is LGBT wiki, the glad.org, and also the Tumblr blog Harvey mentioned. So those are all on there, and my webpage isn't loading, so I can't link it in the chat. But wait, maybe I can. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, I just linked the thing. But
Yeah. For those watching
sorry,
this,
you go ahead.
for those watching this after like it's uploaded and it's not live anymore, I also put the link to the chat, the Discord for the ACE community in the description, and I'll put Princess Bunny's Twitter link in the description too. So yes.
Yeah, and just very, very quick rundown of some of the questions that I know we got earlier that we didn't get the chance to answer. What's a good way to come out to someone as airways to people who aren't familiar with the terms? Honestly, the best way I think would just be to like sort of say like, hey, these are terms I use and this is what they mean. Just kind of like give them the quickest rundown you can of like what the term means, and like you kind of have to like explain it to them. Just be like, hey, this is what I am and what it means, because if they don't know, then they just kind of don't know, and that's an opportunity to sort of like let them know. And then another one that we had was from Miss Applewhite was thoughts on having fictional crushes and being on the ace spectrum.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe.
Listen,
I sent for Shadow Nico, and I don't apologize for it. Leave me be. Leave me.
You also simp for Kate a little bit. Don't lie.
I don't simp for Cade. I simp for Macbeth.
Okay. You are Cade.
I am Cade. I exude Cade energy.
Yeah, and like, especially with it's a vibe. It's like they're fictional. It's like whatever. That's up to you. It's I feel like that, just in my mind, that's kind of like a completely different territory than like romantic attraction with like normal like real people, because that is, they're like, one is fictional, the other is real. It's like fictional, you're just kind of consuming media and like interacting with media. That's how you do. People love a good self-insert fan fiction and all that jazz. And
I have a friend who's written Darth Vader reader fan fiction before, so you know.
It's this whole.
Sorry, most people are going.
Go ahead. I'm just gonna read something that Kelpie sent to the the discussion chat, but it has to do with Rick's writing earlier. So if you have something on this topic.
It's not really on the topic. Okay.
When I was like really little, like I had only read the first series. I don't even think House of Hades had come out yet, or Nico had come out yet. But when I was really little, I was like, do I have a crush on Nico D'Angelo? The answer was no. I wanted to be Nico D'Angelo, and here we are.
I mean, vibes me at Leo Valdez. Anyway,
me formally
here we are.
asking the Discord if they knew anyone who was.
You.
But-
Do you know anybody like Leo?
Then Harvey was like, yes, and then I was like, okay, who? And Harvey's just like, oh, honey, and I was
Oh,
like,
honey.
I was having like a really himbo moment. I was like, so you're not gonna tell me?
I normally it's my job to be the himbo.
I think like from the interactions, I just absorbed it.
But another so Kelpie sent this to the chat earlier, and it was Rick's writing. He made some writing choices in the beginning in the series that were shallow one-off stuff that he didn't think deeply about, and some shallow research that he's now seeing as a bigger problem in his work that he's trying to fix, but he can't go back and rewrite all of his work too, so things are messy. And we're more happy that he sees his failings and admits it. So I think that that's really important, that he acknowledges that some things that he's done in the past are not good, and he's tried to fix it.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I like
Yeah,
that.
like-
That's important to me.
Especially like in Trials of Apollo, we get like the little retcons. Like the Hunters of Artemis do also swear off women, like relationships with women as well as relationships with men, because it's sort of like an overarching like focus on the hunt rather than romance. And then like
Rip to all those Talia X Artemis X. I'm sorry. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
They're sisters. That too.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, there's that's one, and then like one that I've particularly noticed is like a lot of retconning with Piper's character, as Rick has learned more about like issues he's and like tropes and bad things he's fallen into with Piper's heritage and identity and just stuff like that. And then also I know, like, as an example of like a place where he's been able to sort of fix things is some of the Magnus Chase books, especially like Ship of the Dead. He got like something wrong about Ramadan, so he actually like did like he like paused the publication of the books to fix that note, and then started releasing the books again. So there are like some copies of Ship of the Dead that have that note, and then others that don't. And then there's also, I believe, Natalie Chase had like there's like some note about her using the term spirit animal, and then I believe he also sort of quietly went back and fixed that.
Yeah.
But it's like it's little things,
That
and
also-
usually
Oh, sorry.
yeah, I was just like, usually Rick isn't very vocal about it because he's kind of trying to stay quiet about like, yes, I made a mistake, I'm going to try to fix it as best as I can, but he doesn't like to acknowledge it. I feel like because he doesn't want to feel like he's begging for brownie points. He's just kind of like, I have made a mistake, I'm going to try and fix it as best as I can, but I'm not going to like acknowledge that like, oh, look at me, I'm fixing the thing, ooh, I'm the best.
Yeah,
Like he's trying
like-
to sort of avoid that.
Yeah. I do want to also add too, like that also shows a lot of like, you know, commitment to trying to do right by people, because holding publishing processes is not easy. The publishing world has a lot of set rules and expectations. I don't know. I listened to a lot to Hickey Drawing Green, and they talk a lot about like the publishing process. Like for example, books will only come out I think on Tuesdays or Thursdays, one of those 2 days, and like you cannot change that. Like I think they were changed for like one author, maybe Stephen King. I think is the guy got it changed once. But other than that, yeah, it's hard to change the publishing process. So the fact that Rick went through the effort and was able to get his publishing company to say, okay, fine, we'll let you edit it, because usually it's closed.
Do you guys mind if I read out? Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah,
Are we thinking the same thing about the question that was in the comments? In the live chat? It's just a quick thing. It's by you, Jewel, when you sleep. They asked about thoughts on a female, me having a crush on Nico. And I mean, like, I had crushes on straight girls before, so, but it's not like I'm going to actively pursue them and like try to be in a relationship with them.
Yeah.
You can't control who you're attracted to, and I feel like that's something very important. And even with fictional characters, and actually especially with fictional characters, they're fictional.
They're fictional.
They're not a real person. Like it's
I will say-
okay.
But please don't
Yeah, it's
erase.
totally
Yeah,
fine.
don't erase the fact that Nico is gay, but like
Yeah.
as long as you're acknowledging that, like it's okay. Just
Yeah,
being like,
and
yeah, he's gay, I could never be with him, but like
Yeah.
I'm not That's not a fault. of
It
him.
reminds me of this story that I read about this little boy whose favorite character from Steven Universe was Pearl, and he put like a pearl on his forehead and during like daycare or something, and he was talking to his to the person who was working at his daycare about it, and he said something about how much he loved Pearl, and he said, if Pearl liked boys, I would date her. And I think that really emphasizes like the thought process you should have about it. Like you shouldn't be like oh, because I want him to be attracted, because I want to be with him, like he's now attracted to women. It's more of a acknowledge that like you can't like acknowledge that the character has a certain preference and that you don't fall inside of that preference, and like be okay with that, but it's okay to like still like the character. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and having a crush on Nico is different than like shipping Nico with women actively in canon. Like, that's a little bit that's more racial than like just having a crush on someone. Because you can't control who you're attracted to, but you can actively acknowledge that shipping Nico with women in canon is problematic. So
Yeah.
No, don't do
Yes.
that.
Don't do that.
Raina and Nico are
Insert,
friends.
insert the duet between Hazel and I.
Yes.
This is my friend.
Oh.
Friend.
Just friends. No, yes, just friends. Seriously. So we probably do need to try to wrap up because we have gone significantly
Yes.
over, as we always do. on
We have been
representation
going for a
panels.
while.
Yeah. I'm sort of glad that we were like the last group because we went over an hour and 40. No, we went over like 46 minutes.
Yeah, almost an hour.
I mean, we started 15
Love-
minutes
love
after the
that for
hour,
us.
so like more
That's
than like
true.
half an hour, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
Okay. Anyway, anything else you guys want to say before we sign off?
Oh, I had one thing. I do want to say that I personally like the Trail Project's resources for like very base preliminary learning, like not necessarily learning. It's not necessarily always going to be the best thing to answer all the questions you have if you're questioning, like who you are. You want more in-depth research, but it's a great way to just be educated on the general terms of situations, so you don't come off sounding ridiculous and accidentally offending people. So, if you want quick reads on basic resources on not just asexuality but a lot of broad spectrums, Trail Project has a lot of good resources just for like the basic reading.
Yeah.
Surface
And
reading.
I know that like a lot of you are also on the fan server. So if you have questions, if you like read something and you have questions, feel free to @ me in server discussion or somewhere, because I have done a lot of research over the years. So
Yeah, and also you can always ask questions in most situations. Just to also make sure when you ask questions, you're being mindful of not being like like phrasing is really important. You can ask questions even if they seem like not smart questions, as long as you're being like mindful about how you phrase stuff. So like for example, I got a question on Reddit when I posted my Ace Reddit photo, which was basically like, I just don't understand how people don't want kids. Harmful phrasing. Good phrasing might be like, oh, does that mean you don't want to have kids? So phrasing, it's important. And that's my last 2 cents.
Yeah.
All right.
okay, I think that's bye you guys. Love you. Remember, just because I guess it doesn't work because we're not in character, but just because the gods aren't real doesn't mean science isn't. Wash your
pagan,
hands.
so I'm pagan. It works for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Make sure that wash your hands, wear a mask, social distance.
Sanitize your phone.
The virus is still out there. Sanitize your phone. Just take care of yourself. Be good. Stay healthy. Drink water. Eat food. Take your meds. Get plenty of rest. I know that it's really late in some parts of the world for you guys, so please get rest.
Sure.
And yeah.
All right.
Did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
You're valid.
Yes.
And supported.
So yeah, we love you all. Thank you so much for hanging out with us when we talked about, important topics.
Love you all.
Love you guys. Thank you.
All right. Hey guys, it's Hazel the Radar. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us for this extra long panel. We really appreciate you guys so much. So I just want to say a quick shout out to all Patreons, Ainsley, Tiffany, and Luke You guys are amazing, and we appreciate you. You can also become a YouTube member now. That's a new feature we have. And so if you're a YouTube member past a certain level, you also get recognized in the comments, such as Gemma, who is amazing. Eliza's not listed on here because they're all at that level, but Eliza's also amazing and has become a Patreon, or not a Patreon, a YouTube member. We appreciate that. So thank you guys so much, and continue to be awesome and amazing, and we'll see you on tomorrow's panel.